I remember the exact moment my voice failed. My high school graduation, plastic chairs lined in the sultry courtyard, thick with the scent of June bugs and concrete. I stood at the little wooden podium with a sheet of paper trembling in my grip, my heart thudding desperately like a caged bird. The listless old microphone whined as I leaned in. My speech was supposed to last 5 minutes, a brief inspiration for my classmates, but as I uttered my intentions, I want to pursue classical music, to study violin in the city and maybe, after hard work, play the Palacio de Bellas Arts. A snicker snaked up from the front row. My cousin Alex splayed confidently in his suit, lips curling in disbelief, and then more laughter from my uncle Salvador and my aunt Letty, and most painful, my mother's nervous little sigh. Someone started clapping, probably to hurry me along. My mouth dried up. I looked into the crowd. Sunlight caught the wrinkles at the corners of my mother's eyes. She wouldn't meet my gaze. My bow tie felt scandalously tight. My voice faltered. I know it sounds unlikely, I managed, but music, another giggle, a bark from Uncle Salvador, music is where I can be honest, maybe more than anywhere else. The principal gave a little cough, stepping closer. I skimmed the rest of the speech, hearing only my own pulse, my hands slippery against the wood. When I sat down, I truly saw my family's faces, skeptical, embarrassed, diminished by the presence of my aspirations. Back at home, the reception was friendly, but the conversations clung to safe ground. Who got accepted to UNAM for medicine, who'd start at the plant, who'd join the family bakery. The congratulatory handshakes felt like consolation prizes. Later that night, after the last of the tamales, my mother sat on the edge of my bed, her hands plucking at the comforter. "Ay, Hijo," she said in that gentle, defeated tone, "do you remember your Uncle Javier? He tried too with those drums, remember, but you know how hard it is." "It's good to be realistic." I heard in her voice the ache of a woman who had learned too many times the cost of hope. Truthfully, I wanted to cry, but I waited for her to leave, closing my eyes and listening to the fat rain splattering outside, promising myself I would still go, even if it meant departing alone. 2 weeks later, I was on the bus to Mexico City with nothing but my violin case and a duffel bag, watching my neighborhood recede into patchy fields and gray haze. The city unfolded before me, noisy, sprawling, indifferent. My first months there were tough, renting a tiny room above a tortilleria, waking up to the scent of hot maize at dawn. My landlord, Senora Elodia, asked me every morning if I had found work. I told her I'd had auditions, but mostly I played in subways for coins. My college dreams delayed by tuition I couldn't cobble together. When I called home, my mother's voice flickered between forced cheer and disappointment. "Maybe you could come back, Hijo. Your uncle says there's space at the bakery." I lied easily. "I have some lessons lined up." Instead, I spent nights practicing Zardas and Paganini variations until my fingertips split. If I scraped together enough pesos, I allowed myself a roll of sweet bread for breakfast. Everything became sharper in the struggle, the creak of my bow, the unforgiving chill of winter through the paper-thin walls, the taste of failure growing stale on my tongue. Sometimes in the subway, teenagers would record me on their phones. People muttered Buscavidas as if it were a curse. More than once, a scammer tried to run off with my case. But some evenings, when the train lights flickered and the crowd thinned, I would close my eyes and imagine myself on stage. The hall swelled with applause. For a few suspended moments, it felt real. When I finally auditioned for the Conservatorio, I walked the shaded avenue on trembling legs, a borrowed suit too short at the wrists. The jury, a panel of blank faces, waited in the cool rehearsal room as I unpacked my battered violin. I started with the prelude from Bach's E major partita. Every note carried our old house, my little sister's giggle, my mother's worn hands. Afterward, one professor with sharp eyes leaned forward. "Where did you study?" "Myself, mostly, senor," he nodded, inscrutable. I left the building certain I had failed. Weeks of silence passed. I played at birthday parties, weddings where no one listened except an occasional old woman dabbing her eyes. I told myself I would last just one more month. Then a letter came, creased but official. I had been accepted. A partial scholarship, barely enough but enough. That day tears came hot and unfiltered. Nobody knew but me. I phoned my mother with trembling hands. "I got in." She cried quietly, congratulated me, and then worried out loud about money, but she didn't try to bring me home. The conservatory was harder still. Some kids came from old money. They had private tutors, sparkling instruments, shoes that weren't cracked at the edges. I worked mornings sorting vegetables at a mercado, afternoons cleaning a music storeroom for practice time. There were plenty of days I wondered if I'd made the worst mistake of my life. One professor, Senora Rivera, took an interest in me. She sometimes paused after class. "Daniel, your vibrato is wild like a stray dog, but your heart. You remind me why I teach." She found me a job as an usher at the music hall, paid for one of my broken bows to be repaired. "Don't waste it," she warned. 3 years went by. I learned to sleep in bursts and play through pain. I made friends with a pianist, Camilla, whose hands always shook before recitals. We ate street tacos, huddled in cold parks, sharing stories in the silence between bites. On good days, the city seemed full of possibility. On bad ones, it pressed down like concrete. Sometimes I'd hear from home. Another cousin got married, my mother's health was holding. Alex had taken over as assistant manager at the factory. But when I mentioned a chamber recital or a competition in Guadalajara, my mother's responses were vague and strained. The gap widened, but I pressed on. The breakthrough came with a competition, the National Youth Soloists Prize. The application alone cost a week's wages. On the day of the audition, I felt every childhood bruise, the laughter, the warnings, the fear. All afternoon, I sat backstage, tracing the chipped edge of my violin, listening to the other contestants warming up, sharp, professional. When my turn came, the stage lights were blinding. Every step echoed. I shut my eyes and drew the bow. Tchaikovsky, throat-tight and mournful, unraveling every sacrifice I'd made, every silent hour spent hungry. I played as if I'd never play again. Afterward, applause, the physical kind that carries warmth to your bones. 2 weeks later, I received the call, "Daniel Robles, you are the winner." "Congratulations." I put the phone down and stared at my hands, disbelieving. The following months passed in a thick haze, interviews, lessons with visiting maestros, and finally, my debut at the Palacio de Bellas Arts. My name printed in a program, a tailored suit, a stage beneath the Tiffany glass dome. One afternoon, a formal invitation left at my mother's house. She called immediately, voice trembling. "Hijo, are you sure I should come? Will I know anyone's?" I asked her to bring the family, to gather the grandmothers and the brothers, and yes, even Alex and Uncle Salvador. "I want to see you in the hall," I said, though the truth was I wanted them to see me. The days before the concert, I barely slept. My heart spent itself in strange ways, alternating between pride and terror, self-doubt and yearning. On the night itself, the dressing room was filled with the antiseptic smell of fresh flowers, and my hands trembled so badly I worried I would drop my bow. Senora Rivera came backstage. "You have fought so hard for this," she told me. "Let them come, let them see." From behind the thick velvet curtain, I could glimpse the audience, the burnished glow of the hall, the restless shifting of 300 souls. I spotted the flash of my mother's red shawl, her hands clasped in her lap. Beside her sat Alex, looking out of place in a rented suit, and Uncle Salvador, jaw set tightly. The applause brushed over me as I stepped out into the glare. My heart hammered, every step heavy, ceremonial. I played Grieg's sonata, the opening phrases as familiar to me now as breath, the melodies carrying the taste of bread, the clatter of distant metro trains, the grit of years spent in the city. As I played, the tremor in my hands melted away, replaced by a focus so clear it was like cool water poured over a burn. The hall was silent, the notes filled the gold-leafed space, no laughter, no doubts, only music. After the final chord, breathless, I let the silence hang, an emptiness that begged for a response. Applause crashed then, wave after wave, not just polite but roaring and real. I stood under the lights not as a curiosity or a disappointment, but as someone they had to see. Backstage, I hugged Camilla, dizzy with relief. The family came down in hesitant clumps, my mother first, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands cool and shaking as she held my cheeks. "My Hijo, that was you. All those years, this is what you were doing." I nodded, too tired and full to speak. She pressed her head to my shoulder, a gesture that felt at once like apology and pride. Alex approached awkwardly, unable or unwilling to meet my eyes. "You did good, Danny," he muttered. "Didn't think you'd get this far." It wasn't contrition, but for the first time it wasn't scorn. Uncle Salvador lingered at the edge, his usual gruffness fading. "So you're famous now," he said, laughter hiding something else. I shrugged, feeling something in me unclench, a tension loosed after years. Later, as the audience drifted out into the city's warm night, my family gathered together in the courtyard, awkward, uncertain, but present. They asked questions, careful at first, but then urgent. How did I survive by myself? Did I always know I'd make it? Did I remember the old songs Grandpa used to play on his battered radio? I told stories about subway musicians united by hunger, about professors who could break a heart with a single sentence, about days when even the city itself seemed an adversary. My mother listened, her hand brushing mine. As the lights of the Palacio flickered out, Alex grinned. Careful, Daniel, or you'll be too important for our birthdays. I punched his arm, and for a second we were boys again on the rooftop, daring each other to climb higher. That night back in my apartment, quiet after the storm of applause, I felt both emptied and filled. The city outside still hummed and coughed, indifferent to my story. In the shadowed blue night, I unpacked my violin with slow, reverent hands. I had come home changed, a little older, more bruised, but unbreakable. Whatever had kept me going through those hungry years, love, foolish hope, dogged conviction, it had made this moment possible. And while I couldn't erase the pain of rejection or heal the wounds that distance and doubt had inflicted, I realized I didn't have to. Success, I understood now, wasn't the standing ovation or the shiny program. It was having the courage to return and let the ones who doubted witness, for themselves, the music I'd carried alone for so long. Outside, Mexico City pulsed beneath the stars, endless, overwhelming, and once again mine.